Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing a dream job update. So probably like 2 months ago, I shared a video where talking about how I was quitting my job of 6 years, which I never really thought that I would do, to do something that I've always in my heart felt like would be the best fit for me. And then I guess about a month ago, or probably like maybe like a month ago or so, I finally, was able to release the video in talking about what that dream job actually is. So, a number of thousands of people watched that video. Surprisingly, I guess I'm always surprised when people watch career related videos, because I'm assuming this is not actually the case, but like in my head I'm thinking only people who are subscribed to me who work in my field or a similar field will be interested in watching such a video. But then again, of course, most YouTubers views come from people who are not subscribed. So anyway, all of that to say, it was a decent amount of interest in that particular video. So I thought that I would share an update on my dream job and share with you if it's still giving dream job vibes after me working the job for actually almost 3 months. I think my first day was January 10th. February, March, April, and it's April the 7th at the filming of this video. So therefore, I've been working this job for about 3 months. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So if you have not watched the previous video, or if you don't know what I do for a living, then you should know that I am by degree a social worker. I actually identify as a social worker, but my roles that I've done in life have never been like you could also be, have a degree in psychology or counseling or something else to also do the job. I would say that that's been the case and still is the case to this day. So it's not like, I don't know, there are some jobs that only social workers can do, and some jobs that companies look for only people who have a degree in social work to do, but that's not really been the case for me. Even right now, even guidance counselors have done the job that I'm doing now. We have, like licensed professional counselors, so on and so forth. I read off the credentials that one would need in the previous video. But yeah, so I've never really done a job that's like strictly for social workers. So what I do now is I actually work and am employed through the public school system, and I actually go into 7 of like 40 some schools, and I serve students who are basically who have a strong need for counseling services. Now, the purpose of my service is to help the students really academically. So think of the kid who is struggling with coping strategies. Maybe they're always fighting, or have some type of peer relationships, or they struggle to maintain relationships with administrators or like teachers. Just think of the kids who are probably getting kicked out of school a whole lot, who have a lot of referrals, who are really struggling. My job is actually to work with that select amount of students who really the school kind of dictates who is in need of that service. So the referrals for services can come from a teacher, guidance counselor, principal, literally anyone. But think of those students, and those are the students that I serve. I have about 45 students on my caseload. But like I mentioned in the previous video, some of the services are indirect, but the vast majority of them, 97% of them, are direct services, meaning I meet one-on-one with these students. And I typically do this on a weekly basis. I think there might be one student that I can think of off the top. Yeah, I think one student. Well, 2 students, but one is expelled at the moment. But one student currently who I meet with on like an every other week, twice a month basis, because the need for services isn't that strong. I'm assuming what normally happens is that over time we just kind of decrease the amount of services. So when I picked up the case, I'm assuming, he's kind of like at the tail end of needing the service. So eventually we might move to just removing the service completely. But that's pretty much my caseload. If you're wondering about the other schools and the other students, I have 4 coworkers who do my job, and they service those schools. We all split up we have like 7 schools each. And so that's how that works. I have one area, the area that's actually closest to home for me, so I get to work in lickety split. But that's kind of how that works. Apparently they try to put you in the zone where you are closest to your house, which is convenient. So it takes me no time at all to get to work, as opposed, this is the quickest that I've gone to work in since I since I graduated. So I had a job in college that was on campus, and I lived in an off-campus apartment that wasn't far away, and I could walk to that job or drive to that job. But since then, since I've graduated college, I've never had a job that I can get to in like 15 minutes. So that's been really exciting. I do have to say that that's one plus. Another plus, just thinking of pluses, is that we do get mileage reimbursement. Again, I don't really drive that far. All of the schools are like in the same zone, a couple miles away. Maybe the furthest is like 4 miles away, but I am back and forth between schools. Sometimes I go to the district, which is a very long way away. I may have to go there to get a picture taken for a badge, or to pick up some like PPE, or to go to a meeting or something like that. But for the most part, I kind of just stay in my little zone. So like I said, 4 other coworkers, 3 social workers, 1 LPC, and we just split up all of the schools. And so I do have to say, one of the weirdest things, and I'm going off the dome with this, I'm going to try to cover all the things that I've been wanting to cover, but I don't have any notes. But one of the weirdest things, I don't know that I'll honestly ever really get used to this. Some people say it's a good thing, some people say it's a bad thing, but I only see my coworkers really maybe twice a month. Like maybe, by coworkers, I mean the 4 other people who do my same job. The reason why they stand out to me is because the reason why I consider them to be my coworkers is because they do the exact same job. So, you know, I relate to them most because we do the exact same job. Of course, I work with the teachers and, you know, LEA representatives and so on and so forth, but we don't do the same job at all, even remotely close. I mean, so they're my coworkers, but you know, you get what I'm saying. So anyway, I only see them maybe once or twice a month. Typically we have like a one meeting at the district with our supervisor per month, and then we might get together for lunch perhaps some other random day out of the month, but I only see them a couple times. I don't talk to them otherwise. I don't text them or call them. What's interesting, I was telling basically any coworker that I've had has pretty much turned into a friend, or that's where I've made friends the last 10 years. I was telling my previous coworker turned friend the other day that it's just very interesting, that whole dynamic, because it's like I'm still new to this. So these are the people who naturally I would learn from. These are the people who, you know, like I just feel like it's just weird not being like working under someone or in close proximity with someone who does this job as I'm learning it. I guess I'll be honest in saying that I haven't required a lot of help. The job is super easy, but it's still just a weird experience. And to not be around my coworkers every day is so weird, because at my previous job where I worked for 6 years, we were really close. We hung out, you know, on the clock, off the clock. We saw each other every day. Like if someone didn't show up to work, we would be like, oh, where's such and such today? Like if somebody didn't text and say, oh, I'm here, there, or wherever, like just to kind of let us know their whereabouts. And you know, like we didn't hear from them, it would be very strange to not hear. Like somebody would be asking, have you seen so-and-so today? Oh, I wonder where such and such was. It wasn't a big deal. It was just like us, you know, kind of looking out for one another. Now, if I didn't show up for work for a month, I don't think anybody would really notice. The reason why I say that is because I don't interact with really any other adults that frequently. When I did start, my supervisor, literally the day of orientation, I learned that my supervisor was resigning. So we have kind of like an interim supervisor. I don't hear from that supervisor. I didn't hear from my previous one. I will email if I have a question, comment, concern. So I'm not saying like I'm being slighted in any way because I don't hear from them, but it still is a weird dynamic because any other job that I've worked, my supervisor would be on site. I would see them every day, consult with them if I needed to. My coworkers who did the same job as me would be right there. If somebody didn't show up, it would be concerning, not for like, you know, personally as a coworker, I'm concerned like, where is this person, my friend, not really like, where is my coworker, you know, where is this employee? Because, you know, that's not my aim. My aim is just, where is this person? So it's just been interesting to not have any contact, really regular contact with my supervisor, no regular contact with my coworkers. Again, I can email them, I can text them. My coworkers, I have their numbers. That's how we, you know, if I have a question, that's how we link up. If we do lunch together or something. But that has been the biggest shock to me. And I really don't know that I'll ever adjust to that dynamic is so weird because all of my other jobs have been the complete opposite. Okay, so let's talk more about what I do. Let's talk about a typical day, which in the next video, I plan to bring you guys along with me for a typical day. So again, I have 7 schools, but I think one of them I don't even go to because there are no students who they have identified in need of counseling at that particular school. So I don't even go to that school. So I think I go to 6 schools. I go to a high school, two middle schools, and 3 elementary schools. I'm pretty sure that's what I do. So that's where all of my students are. I will tell you, most of them are at the high school. That's where my office is, and I spend the vast majority of my days there. And then I have a good amount at one particular middle school, and I'm honestly starting to get a good amount at one particular elementary school. I do have to say, in counseling the students, I don't see them longer. Like, the longest that I see one student, which is a high schooler, is 30 minutes. Actually, I just started with this other student in elementary school. They're almost in going to middle school, actually, and I see them for 30 minutes. But otherwise, I see all of the other kids for about 20 minutes. That's pretty much the standard. And that's enough time to do, some type of activity, talk about their struggles, talk about, positive decision-making skills. 20 minutes is honestly enough time. I do find myself doing some social work stuff. Like, I'll be on a meeting and the parent will be there and they'll be talking about, let's say medication or this or that and the third. And I'm like, I don't want to take over this whole meeting to talk about medication or, kind of to problem solve that. But I'm like, I'll call you after this, or you call me after, and we can problem solve this situation, because I know pretty much all that there is to know because of my previous job about, the different doctors in the area, the different strategies and, steps that one can take to help their child get the services that they need. I primarily do this with the little ones. But I do find myself doing more like social work type stuff, but really it's just initiated by me. Speaking of social workers, apparently we do have like a social worker or 2, and they work for the district, but I've never seen any or heard of them. But apparently we do, because I did see some social workers mentioned for when they celebrated School Social Work Week. I saw some pictures, but I've never seen any of them. So it's not like, each school has a school social worker. That's not the case. In fact, none of the schools that I go to, of the 7, I'd probably say that none of any in the district has like an on-site social worker. Unlike my husband's school, in his district, there is a social worker stationed at his school. So, we don't have that where I'm working. So that's also different, that there isn't like even a social worker on site or around. So that's something that's very interesting to me. In a perfect world, obviously, we wouldn't have to have all of these services, but in working with kids, we kind of do. Like, in a perfect world, social workers wouldn't even have to do what they do, because everything would be just copacetic and, just great. But that's not the case. That's not the reality. So it is interesting for there not to be social workers in the schools. So with my particular kids, just my little caseload, obviously I take on a little bit of that role in trying to help the parents with, linking them to resources and that type of thing. But even then, I still don't even really communicate with the parents, which is very different for me, because at my previous job of 6 years, and the job before that, I used to go into homes and do home visits and work with parents and teach them strategies for improving the parent-child relationship and, that type of thing. So to not work with any parents is a little interesting, but it's not anything that's like, super out of the ordinary. Like, it's nothing that I have a problem with, but it is new for me, because I used to go into homes for years and years and years and, kind of help parents and meet them where they are in the home. So one thing that I've noticed in working with education, so outside of all of the other things that I've mentioned, one thing that I've noticed is that I feel as though there's a particular set of students who fall through the cracks. And those are the students with severe behavior problems, my students. And so what I've noticed is that sure, there are IEPs that can be put in place, BIPs, behavior intervention plans, I think is what that's called, 504 plans, we can do functional behavior assessments and all this and that and the third, but it still just seems like these students fall through the cracks. the reason why I feel like these students fall through the cracks is because it seems like it's not in, like, everything is it's a struggle up until the services are put in place. And even when the services are put in place, the students are still falling through the cracks. So as an example, let's take one of my students. They have an IEP, they have a BIP, they have counseling services with me. In some schools, I do want to mention, they might even have a counselor who is contracted through the school, through another agency, and they come in and they do counseling. Typically, some of my students can go to see that counselor because they're going to bill their insurance. I don't bill anything. I don't bill for my services. None of us do. So they can kind of get both services, and that other service is like traditional therapy anyway, so it's different from what I'm doing. And so they can have that counselor and go see, you know, that therapist and work with them. But you know, just as an example, they could have all these different services and they're still falling through the cracks. Now, I don't know exactly whose fault this is. I'm not here to point blame, but I'm just saying, like, with a kid can have all these services and then they can still be struggling. You know, I still have kids who are getting expelled every other day. I still have kids who are being put on kind of like on home-based learning because their behaviors at school are not conducive to learning, and they are doing a little bit of everything else but learning. So it's very interesting to see, you know, firsthand how these students are falling through the cracks. Again, a lot of people will point blame. A lot of people will say it's the parents' fault. Sure, you know, we might consider that to be a factor. Some will say it's the school's fault. Sure, I think of it as, I liken it to teaching students about money, or just teaching the general population about money. Society wants the schools to teach about money, and schools want society and parents to teach about money. So like, because everybody's going back and forth, money doesn't necessarily get taught like at all, because people are just going back and forth. Now they are starting to, like in my district, there are personal finance classes, which is great, because in a perfect world, again, kids would learn about money from their parents who know about money, but not all parents know about money. So if we're not teaching this in the schools or somewhere else, then we can't count on kids learning about money, and we all have to learn about money. So it's just like a never-ending battle. It's like a catch-22 type of situation, and that's what I find to be the case when it comes to the kids with behavior problems. Again, normally their behaviors are very severe before all of these systems, because you know, with the school system, there's all these systems that are in place. So before these services all get put in place, normally their behaviors have already reached a level of severity, and now you kind of have to try to, you know, meet them where they are and try to move them forward with them already being at that level. Again, school system blames parents, parents blame school system, people just go back and forth, and what happens is the kids don't necessarily get the services that they need. I guess I have to say one thing the reason why I feel this way is because, well, first of all, I used to witness it firsthand at my previous jobs. I used to work in the school, like-ish, with some students, but I wasn't employed through the school system. But anyway, I guess I'm really seeing it on the backhand as a clinician, because I'll meet with the student and they'll share something with me that they've never shared before, and it'll be something, you know, like a traumatic experience, and I'm like, you know, have you ever shared this with anyone? You know, just doing my best clinical work, and they're like, no, and I'm like, well, that's why, you know, I talk about this all the time, and I'm like, well, that's why the student has no motivation to do their work. They don't have motivation to live. So why would they show up for school every day? You know, like, and what does that even look like? Like them showing up and doing their best work and being their best selves. What does that even really look like for this type of student? So it's kind of interesting, because I guess I can't tell you how many students. I would be willing to bet that there's, let's say I have 40 kids who I see weekly. At least like 15, 20 of them so far after 3 months have shared with me something that they have not shared with someone else, or have shared with me something that they have kept in private. And whether that's like about their sexuality, or about their, you know, will to live, or about their, you know, some type of abuse, or some type of gang affiliation. Like literally, I have been shared, like and I don't take that for granted. I like being the gatekeeper of sensitive information, but it's just like, wow, you know, there's so much information being shared. It's no wonder why the students are acting like this. Now, I'm thinking, like, on the other hand, like a teacher, like, first of all, you know, my students are the ones who do not have great relationships with teachers, and I'd be willing to bet that judging by what I see sometimes, the feelings are quite mutual. But it's just like, wow, like if the teacher knew, or administration knew, or if someone else knew the load that this child was carrying, then maybe they would be more sensitive to their issues. But then again, it's kind of like, well, if a person doesn't know what another person is going through, you know, if they haven't built up that relationship, and you know, that's a lot of relationship building. Like the average teacher, I don't think is going to get that kind of information, you know, from a middle schooler or a high schooler. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's kind of like, you know, you can't be sensitive to someone's needs or struggles or their plight if you don't know what their struggles are or what their plight is. So again, that's why I kind of feel like it's like students are falling through the cracks. One remedy, which isn't really a remedy that I've grown to learn, is that if a student can't behave at school, then maybe virtual learning or at home learning virtually could be an option for them. But then that happens, and so then we come back and we meet about it, and then the kid hasn't done any of their work, or they've done the work and they failed their classes. So it's kind of like, so what's the remedy for this? Like, I know the kid is roaming through the hallways, skipping class and doing all these other things, but like, what is the remedy for this situation? Because you know, it's not working out. Like, how do we fix this? So anyway, it's been quite interesting. I will come back and do another update in a couple of months. As I mentioned before, I am at least going to finish out my contract. This is just something that I had to try and wanted to do, something that I've always felt like I would be good at. And I'll be honest, I am really good at it. The job is super easy. It is a dream job when I just show up and do what I am being paid to do primarily, which is to meet with my students and to help them with their struggles. That part of the job is for sure a dream job. The whole job in and of itself is definitely not something, because here's the issue. When I've worked for like smaller agencies, I could share my input and then we can kind of like put together some kind of plan to kind of, you know, change a situation or fix a situation or modify. And so for working for the school system, obviously that is, I can raise my hand and give some input on something, but it's gonna take more than just me when it comes to a whole system, such as the education system, to you know, like make change. So when it comes to the whole picture, it's definitely, you know, a little interesting. But I would still say that I'm still doing dream job work. I still thoroughly enjoy meeting with my students. It's the light of my day. And I just like being there for them and just being that safe space for them, because whenever they do step out of my office or out of my room and go back to class, you know, or go back home, they do face different struggles and have different struggles. But I do like, you know, just their time with me being just a safe time. And I love that. And that's one thing that I love about my role. I've always loved that type of role. Like, I've worked as like a direct care provider for students or with students or kids who, you know, were fighting all the time, who had behavior problems. So like, I've worked one-on-one with these students, and so I know what it's like to be dealing with this regularly every day around the clock. So I'm sensitive to, you know, what teachers and administrators are going through. But also, you know, at the end of the day, it's really about the kid in my book. Like, I just love kids, and kids are gonna trump, you know, adults or anybody else in my world. So I just love just being able to work one-on-one with them. So, you know, they're not cussing me out or yelling at me or screaming at me or running from me. They come, you know, willingly to me, and we meet together, and they like it and I like it. And so I don't have to deal with all of those other issues. But you know, that's just the role that I'm in right now. So just to wrap it up here, I don't know if it's a dream job, but I'm definitely doing dream work. Like, my dream has always been to help bridge the gap for students who struggle in the school system, and I'm doing just that. And I don't think that I could get any closer to doing what I've always dreamed to do than doing this job. So for right now, again, I'm gonna finish out my contract. I guess that ends in June or July, and then I'll kind of reconsider, you know, what life will be like moving forward. I haven't looked for any other job or anything, so, but I am about to get my independent licensure, so that would open up a lot more doors and change the trajectory of the future for me. So anyway, let me know if you work in the education system, what struggles you see. I feel like we can openly talk about this. I feel like we can openly talk about all these things without dragging anyone through the mud or blaming anyone, because I feel like that's when we can't, in life in general, that's when it gets difficult to have conversations that are needed, because people just blame, and you know, like people then get offended, and then it's a whole situation. So let me know if you work in the education system. Let me know what struggles you have. Are you a teacher, assistant principal, or principal? What capacity do you work in? And let's just have an open conversation about things that you see that could be improved in the education system. So that is my dream job update. Just wanted to provide an update for those who are interested. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.